kind of going backwards in the session here. So I am not one of those dudes who, there's no reason to put compression on a distorted guitar because it's already distorted, it's already compressed. That's great if you're using it scientifically. Actually, I've heard really successful people say that. However, I use compression. It's doing something for me. I limit guitars. People like LA3As on guitars. And when you actually look up what an LA3A is doing, it is it's a limiter, and it's got a signal-dependent threshold, which just means the more load you put into it, the more it's compressing, the higher the ratio gets, and it's doing a lot of stuff. It's backing off as you back off, but I kind of use a setting that I think is kind of close to it. It's a fast setting, 10 to 1 ratio, which just means it's basically limiting. And a lot of times when you limit guitars, you get a little bite out of them. When you limit anything, you tend to just kind of squeeze the rag and get bite out of it. Let's have a listen to what this is doing. So just a little explanation of my routing. I have my big chorus guitars here. We can look at it up here. So I got big chorus guitars. I actually recorded 2 sets of those. And one set is being outputted to this big bus, where actually I have a little bit of EQ and a little bit of compression. And that's just because this is a tube compressor emulation, and this thing that Slate made is pretty damn bright. And brighter is better, especially when you can get there naturally, because when you start brightening on EQs, you start to hear the sound of the EQ, and it sounds weird. And I'll get called out on that immediately. Someone's gonna go, why does it sound, why? And this thing, I'm always messing with the settings on it. A lot of times I have attack and release straight up. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not even completely confident in, yeah, it's a slow, I think 0 to 5. I'm not sure. I think this is a slow attack and a bit of release. I like a little pumping when I can get it. Moving right along, you can see in the these verse guitars here, I also have this VCA compressor up, and a lot of times with a cleaner guitar, especially like a lead, where it might be a little planky, it might be a little single stringy, I end up doing a medium fast attack because I really do hear it kind of maybe rub off a little bit, but for me it lengthens the transient, and so it makes it so I'm not altering the tone that we all love, that the guitar player was excited he had this strat that was gonna, but it's not gonna point and dart out at you as much. So let's see what's going on with that guitar in the verse here and just see what that's doing. Not much, a little bit. We're probably getting more out of me just having another gain knob to make things louder at the end of the chain. So moving on to bass. So this is for my mix setup video that will be coming, but essentially the way I'm thinking about bass in this session is I have a couple of channels of bass and I want them to come down to one channel. And I'm doing it through an aux. And then processing, because the bass, you have a couple of things. A channel that's working the neck, you have a channel that's like deep, you have a channel that might be raunchy and distorted. And a lot of times those don't come together and add up to being the bass. So I have inserts on the bass, and I usually would have the Slate, and it's set to, this is kind of an LA2A setting. In fact, when this came out, Steven was like, this is the setting to make it sound like a 2A. I don't know why. I don't know enough about under the hood of a VCA compressor or under the hood of this plugin versus that compressor, whatever, but this setting works. People like 2As on bass. My thought process is, let's try this. And this is actually in my preset. If I go to my bass preset over here. So This is on my low end channel, and I probably, knowing myself, just dragged it and then processed. And it looks like, yeah. So let's see what this is even doing. Let's solo all these bass channels. Yep. And let's see kind of what this is doing on each channel. Oh, looked like it caught something. Again, kind of just there as a safety. You can see that one note hit it. And so it's kind of like, oh, thank God that insurance is there because I'm not paying attention. So I have, down this channel, I usually would have one of these slate blue faces here. And it would be kind of set around here. And right, so that's a little bit much. And like bass waves lend themselves to a nice, healthy 10 dB of compression. If you look at the wave of a bass in Pro Tools, it resembles a vocal. And those soft, transient, gooey, gushy look, they do an awesome job at having a compressor bring up the back end and let them just kind of live in a sea of compression. This now sits on my presets. It's not always there because a lot of times the low end is where a lot of dynamics come from. It's what helps the band spill out the speakers. If it's like, you know, drum attack and then the bass comes right behind it, it's like boom, and that's how. So when you start to flatten that stuff too much, that's like the first place you're gonna lose dynamics. Like a lot of the ways for me to help stuff feel alive is just make sure the drums are pumping and the bass is also welling up, and then everyone else can kind of do whatever they want on top. But I do have my last plugin on this channel is the CLA bass plugin. I don't know what he's emulating. I don't know what the settings are. This is wall, and that's usually what I'm on. So you can kind of assume it's gonna be a brick wall limiter or something like that. And it does a really good job. I usually kind of just do it up and down. And a lot of times when I want to adjust things on the bass channel, I'm not adjusting these faders. Once I get that balance going, I'm adjusting these. They're very fine tuned, and this is my overall tone. So it's holding it down a little bit. You almost want to say it's louder without it, but it's not. It's just more dynamic. He's digging into notes. And I don't think this is taking away from his dynamics as much as it's just making it more consistent. You know, in this record in particular, we went back and retracked the bass with a guitar player when I had already done my first mixes. So this is helping him just kind of sit and hang in the bass section a little more and a little less forefront, be a little more dependable and a little more consistent. So that's kind of my thought on bass. Now the drums.